Being a professional athlete, you kind of push yourself to the limit to try to compete. So overuse injuries, I've had stress fractures, things like that. Last couple years just had some weird luck and coincidences where I've had now 2 broken collarbones, broken elbow, a couple little things in my back, a bunch of ribs, probably about 10 ribs. And most recently a hip and a full hip replacement.
Okay, I will have your feet close together.
Slipped out on some cinders after they cleaned up one of the days this winter and was avoiding a car and kind of just caught a bunch of cinders and landed on my hip perfectly and snapped the femur and crashed my bike at 6 p.m. At the ER, maybe 7:30, and at 9 they're telling me I'm waking up at 6 tomorrow to get a hip replacement. Dr. Hines consulted with me the night before, and he was pretty great. He informed me that he thought Dr. Moore was the best one to do the work. So that with the trust I had with Hines, that was something that had a lot of weight for me.
One of the things I like about being part of the center or a group with great partners that I was able to talk to them about what would you do or what would be best, and I shared that with Matt as well. I think Matt had felt well cared for to have lots of experts in his corner.
Dr. Moore in the morning he's a very calm person. There's a level of confidence. Having that presence was helpful going into a weird couple hours.
When I first looked at those x-rays and got that call, and it was 12 hours before, it was a fracture pattern that is concerning. And a lot happened between that phone call and when I actually met him at the bedside. This injury had real risk of loss of function, and especially for an athlete like Matt, that he might not get back to doing the things he's doing.
For me, swimming during triathlon, it's kind of a chore. It's a lot of just pain tolerance. It's hard work. Now, after having retired from triathlon, it's a place where I can kind of turn my head off, or my head will turn on. You never kind of know which way it's going to go, but for me, I always say it's kind of my yoga. It's my yoga mentally, because whatever's happening in my head is going to come out when you're spending an hour just looking at a black line at the bottom of the pool, but also physically, because it works on a lot of rotation stuff. It's a spot where you're not weight bearing. There's not a lot of activities we can do that aren't weight bearing. So for recovery, obviously, it's super important.
The difference is working with somebody like that is he was super in tune with his body. He felt things and was so aware of what normal is that his willingness to embrace swimming as part of his rehab was what was so successful. I think some people are resistant to it or have a fear of it, and it can be a wonderful tool, and that there's lots of ways to help overcome that anxiety or concern with professional help.
For me, swimming this time was important just because I wasn't able to get on my bike just with hip restrictions from the surgery. Obviously, couldn't run or anything like that. So getting out and doing something that just loosened my body. And I leaned on that early. And then as soon as I was able to ride my bike comfortably and safely, that's taken up a lot of the time. I do everything I can physically, but my number one goal is never taking any steps back. Surgeons, and certainly like Dr. Moore, we sit down and they're used to weekend warriors trying to get back as soon as they can. I also am doing that. That's what I used to do for a living. I'd have to get back as quickly as I could. But any steps back are gonna make that process way longer. So with me, it's always sticking inside of those parameters, and those tools are ways to help me do that.
Going back to that physician-patient relationship, I think really understanding his goals, I felt very lucky that he trusted me to say, hey, listen, this is what I want, and this is how I'm gonna do best.
Selfishly, as an athlete, it was good to check in so I could tell him, hey, I'm riding my bike, is this cool, or I wanna move forward. For me, the biggest thing in recovery, mentally and physically, is moving my body, and once I can do that, things start to get better. So being able to check in and communicate with Dr. Moore about what I should do and what I shouldn't do was pretty crucial.
Without a patient who's willing to kind of put in the effort and do the work, I don't think the outcome can ever be as good. So I always feel that it takes a good surgeon, but it takes that effort with therapy and time and patience and belief that you're going to get better. I think that harnessing the power of the mind is an incredible healing tool. Matt had that from the get-go, which is he knew he was going to get better, and I knew he was going to get better. That belief, if there's one thing, I would say going forward, and I hope I'm not a patient anytime soon, but it's just that belief that this is gonna get better. I'm gonna be okay.
My name is Matt Lieto. I'm a former professional triathlete. The most recent procedure I had at the center was a full hip replacement.